Welcome to a deep dive into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, a great choice.
You know, I have to say, I was really pretty blown away.
Yeah.
It's just such a powerful book. And the minute you start reading about his experiences in Auschwitz, it just really sucks you in.
Yeah.
What was your...
It's remarkable how I mean, you're right there with him as he's navigating the horrors of the camps. But what's even more compelling is that he uses that as a way to understand, why some people found the will to keep going when everything was stripped away.
It's not just a survival story. It's an exploration of the need for meaning.
Yes. Yes.
And even in the darkest of circumstances, and speaking of darkness, I mean, those early descriptions of arrival and selection at Auschwitz are...
I know, it's just chilling.
Yeah.
It's almost unfathomable to think, just being reduced to a number, stripped of your possessions, your identity. I mean, he paints such a visceral picture of that dehumanization.
He actually describes, having to go through that selection himself and worrying that the weight of his bag would make him lean towards, the side that meant being sent to the gas chamber, and just the mental fortitude that it took just to stand up straight in that moment. I can't even imagine.
And then he finds out later that a friend he was with just hours before was sent to the left towards certain death.
Yeah.
And yet, even in that environment, he observed that humor emerged as this coping mechanism, a very
that's kind of amazing.
Dark humor, but
there's that story he tells about the prisoners joking about when we get out, we're gonna ask for the soup to be ladled from the bottom of the barrel because
it's gonna be thicker.
Because, all the good stuff's at the bottom, and it's just heartbreaking, but also strangely uplifting, to find even a sliver of humor in the face of such overwhelming,
darkness.
Why do you think that was such an important coping mechanism?
I think it gave them a sense of control, however small. In a situation where they had so little, humor creates this tiny space of freedom.
Right.
It's a way to connect with each other.
Yes.
And momentarily detach from the horrors that are surrounding them. It's this flicker of defiance in the face of dehumanization.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the humor. He also talks about those mental conversations he had with his wife.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't know if she's alive.
Right. I mean, that's incredible.
As if love itself became a lifeline for him.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to another critical thing that Frankl observed, which is that love transcended the physical barriers of the camp.
Yeah.
It's that connection, even if it's just in his thoughts.
Right.
Gave him a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Something to hold on to when everything else was stripped away.
That reminds me of the part where he talks about hearing the violin playing a tango on what happened to be his wife's birthday.
Right. And how meaningful.
Just a brief moment of beauty.
Right. A fleeting moment. And he talks about how that experience, as brief as it was, reveals this profound truth, and that love is this ultimate human aspiration.
Yeah.
That it's the thing that gives us purpose and meaning.
It's what makes us human,
Absolutely.
Which brings us to, I think, one of his most powerful ideas.
Okay.
Which is that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose our attitude.
Right.
In any circumstance.
It's so powerful.
And he illustrates it with a story about almost escaping from the camp. And he had the opportunity.
He did.
When he chose to stay.
He chose to stay.
To prioritize the well-being of.
Because others were depending on him.
Yeah. It's a powerful example of how, even in the most dire circumstances, we still have a choice.
We do.
We still have that freedom in how we respond.
That's right.
It's difficult to grasp.
It is. It's a difficult concept. Yeah.
It speaks to that incredible strength of the human spirit that he witnessed firsthand.
Yes.
He wasn't just surviving.
Right.
He was searching for meaning.
He was searching for meaning in the midst of suffering.
Yeah. And it's that search that leads him to develop logotherapy.
Right. It's amazing, right? He goes through this horrific experience. Yeah. And it's not just that he endures it.
Right.
But he uses it.
Yeah.
To try to understand what does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
What does it mean to have a life of meaning?
Right.
Even in the face of despair. And that's where logotherapy comes in.
It's such a powerful, like, shift from just surviving to finding meaning in it.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely.
And one of the things he said that really struck me was, he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow.
Right.
And that feels very much at the heart of this.
It is. It is. It's that recognition that our primary drive isn't necessarily, pleasure, like some schools of thought might say, or power, like Alfred Adler might have said. It's meaning.
Yes.
We are hardwired to seek out and find something that gives our lives purpose.
And when we don't find it, when that drive is frustrated, that's when he talks about the existential vacuum.
Yes.
Which I think feels very relevant.
Oh, absolutely.
Even for those of us who've never, experienced the horrors of a concentration camp.
Right.
That feeling of emptiness, boredom, lack of direction.
He says that that's a direct result of, the frustration of our will to meaning. He calls it a neugenic neurosis.
Okay.
Which, unlike, the neuroses that Freud described, stems from a crisis of meaning.
Right.
So it's kind of spiritual emptiness.
So it's not about like repressed desires or past traumas. It's about this lack of direction in the world. And I think that does feel very relatable.
It does, very much so. And in fact, Frankl gives this example of an American diplomat who seeks him out and is deeply dissatisfied with his very successful career.
Wow.
But he's not finding any relief through traditional psychoanalysis because this isn't a man who's struggling with past demons.
Right.
He's struggling with a lack of meaning in his present life.
Yeah.
He's very, successful, materially successful life.
So how does logotherapy actually address this? Like, is it giving a step-by-step guide to, like, this is how you find your purpose?
That's the interesting thing about logotherapy is it's not about providing generic answers or some kind of one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
Frankl believed that meaning is found out in the world. It's not found within, some kind of theoretical framework.
Yeah.
It's
right. It's out there. So it's more about guiding someone to discover their own unique path.
Exactly. It's about helping the individual identify what he calls their unique vocation.
Yeah.
So that specific task, that calling that really resonates with their values, that gives them that sense of purpose.
Okay. That makes sense. I think when we talk about meaning, I think sometimes people, I don't know if it's just me, but equate meaning with happiness.
Right. They think if I find my purpose, I'll be happy all the time.
Yeah. So is that,
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Okay.
Frankl acknowledges that suffering is an inevitable part of life. Logotherapy is not about achieving some blissful state of permanent happiness.
Okay.
It's about finding meaning in and through suffering. It's about transforming those difficult experiences into opportunities for growth and for purpose.
So it's not about denying the darkness. It's about finding the light in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding those sources of strength that can help us navigate difficult times.
And he tells that incredibly moving story about the doctor, who loses his wife.
Yes.
And is just consumed by pain, but then has this realization, his suffering means that she was spared from experiencing that same pain. So it's not that he's like glorifying suffering, but it's finding a way to make sense of it.
Exactly. To find that silver lining, even in the darkest of clouds.
It's amazing, though, that his story, it's so specific and rooted in such a horrific experience. It still resonates with so many people.
It really does. It's a testament, I think, to the universality of this message, that he's really tapping into something fundamental about the human experience.
Yeah.
This need to find meaning and purpose.
Yes.
And that transcends, time and circumstance.
What I find really empowering about the book is that he doesn't just leave us with meaning is important.
Right. He gives us a framework.
Yeah.
He gives us a way to think about it.
Yeah, and even like some concrete pathways to it, like
exactly.
creating work or loving other people or just choosing your attitude. In those moments, do you think, like, for the average person listening to this, what would be, like, the most important thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the key takeaway is that we're not passive recipients of meaning.
Right.
We are active participants in creating it.
Yes.
It's not something that's just handed to us.
Right.
It's something that we cultivate through our choices, through our actions.
It's about finding that meaning. It's not just something that magically appears.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that really stuck out was that idea of like self-transcendence, finding something bigger than yourself.
Yes. That's such an important point, that whether it's dedicating ourselves to a cause or to other people or pursuing a creative passion, right?
Yeah.
Finding something that gives us that sense of purpose beyond our own, immediate needs. And I think that's essential to living a meaningful life.
It's a call to action.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't just an abstract concept. It's like you build it into your life.
That's a great way of putting it. It's like you build meaning into your life.
Yeah.
One choice at a time.
And that's what brings us back to that quote that you had mentioned earlier.
Oh, right.
Man is not destroyed by suffering. He is destroyed by suffering without meaning.
It's such a stark reminder, that our ability to endure hardship, to find that resilience in the face of challenges, it's deeply, deeply intertwined with our sense of purpose. Because without meaning, suffering can feel just overwhelming, unbearable.
Right.
But with meaning, it can be a source of growth, of transformation, even of triumph.
It's amazing to me how much, how important meaning is to being able to get through challenging times.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to...
I think so, too.
To wrap up. This was great. Thank you so much.
This was wonderful. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.